And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another YouTube reading guide series. So today's the sixth video, so video 06, walking through the Top Cow Artifactiverse, or as some of you may consider it, the Witchblade universe. To create this reading guide, I've read the 902 issues that comprise the entire Artifactiverse, and I've used that knowledge to make this map for you. Now, during this series, I use terms like volumes with a big or small V, or I talk about being a type J or a type P reader. This is all a bit overwhelming and it can seem a bit jargony, but if you need more guidance on what I'm talking about, just check out the intro video for this series, which is video 0. The link for that's in the description. So with no further ado, here is the Top Cow Artifactiverse arranged as a simple single visual reading map. Today we're going to continue our walk through the Artifactiverse by continuing the section here, which I've entitled the Origins Era. Please remember this is my own name for this era of the Artifactiverse and not an official title by any means. Now today I want to finish off the rest of the Origins era because in the first video we've covered all of Witchblade and Darkness here, the first part of Darkness. In the second video, we covered all the Tomb Raider stuff on the right. In the video that I just posted, we finished the next run of Darkness, which is all this uncollected stuff on the left here. And then we finished off Witchblade as well. So there's a few bits and pieces I just want to cover now that we've finished bouncing around between Darkness and Witchblade and all those detours. And we can just mop up the minor, smaller series and the spin-offs. Now, most of this can be read pretty much at random. A lot of them are just floating bubbles that are floating around on the map anyway. If anything should be read before or after anything else, I will let you know. I'll also be very clear if anything links into the main Witchblade or Darkness events, but hardly any of them do. So let's start off with this floating bubble here. We've got Tales of the Witchblade. So with Tales of the Witchblade, it's a limited series about previous Witchblade wielders. Think of it a bit like Marvel's What If series with different historical and in fact future women that bear the gauntlet. You can see from the dotted line I've used that this series was never collected. This series contains 10 issues in total. Starts off with issue 0.5, then you should read issues 1 to 8. I would very strongly recommend reading this Tomb Raider Witchblade crossover. It's a very specific one. This is the cover, so you don't get it confused, before you read issue 9 of Tales of the Witchblade. And that's for reasons that will be obvious when you do it. Trust me, you'll thank me. Issue 9 is the end of this short-lived series. Okay, so with the end of that on the map, that's Tales of the Witchblade, as I said. So let's move over. There's something I wanted to show you here. Down here, we've got Tales of the Darkness. So that's an equivalent what if type of series, which released around about the same time. It was only 5 issues in total. It had an issue 0.5 and then issues 1 to 4. It had some very, very cool ideas in it. But unfortunately, it never really followed up on it, which is a bit of a pain. So those are all uncollected. Let's look at some collected series here. So here I've got floating these 2 purple circles. So here's a series to look at. We've got Magdalena. So this one is Magdalena Volume 1. That's a volume with a big V. And that had 3 issues that were prefaced by this Magdalena Angelus crossover. So the trade paperback you can see here has that Magdalena Angelus crossover, then issues 1, 2, and 3 of Magdalena Volume 1. That's volume with a big V. So whilst Magdalena is introduced in The Darkness, this series is set after that introduction and actually details the final arc of this particular iteration of the bearer of the Magdalena role. The art for this trade paperback is by Joe Benitez, and it's excellent. The story itself is okay. A trade paperback for this exists, but is very, very out of print. After reading that, we go down here to Magdalena Volume 2. That's not only Collection 2, but also volume with a big V2, because it contains 4 issues which have a reset numbering pattern. So that's issues 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Volume 2. This series introduces the new Magdalena, who's called Patience, and she's the person assuming this role for the majority of the Artifactiverse. You're going to get to know her a lot better. To be honest, as this is her introduction, you could read it before her other cameos in the Origins era, after Magdalena Volume 1, of course. But frankly, I think that's unnecessary because she's not really very well fleshed out in the Origins era. So as long as you read this before the Artifact era and the next videos we talk about, you'll be fine. Whether you're a Type P or J reader or anything like that, most comic readers are familiar with the idea of meeting a character first and then reading their origin later on. So like I say, a trade paperback for this exists, but is very, very out of print. I'm not 100% certain that this has actually been physically collected since, and I have heard rumours it was actually re-released with the subtitles Origins, but this is all unconfirmed. If you're trying to track it down, the easiest way to do it is go by the creators. Volume 1 is Magdalena by Joe Benitez, and Volume 2 is Magdalena by Brian Holguin. That's Holguin. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's pan back a bit. What else do we have? Oh, right, cool. Over here, we have some other uncollected things. So you can see here we've got what I call multi-line crossovers. So this is a circle that I'm reserving for multiple other series and things that aren't one-shots because they involve multiple lines, as in more than just two, and they're not just one-shot issues. On reflection, this is a bit of an arbitrary distinction, but what the hell, it made sense to me at the time, okay? So in terms of multi-line crossovers, what I consider is this, Witchblade, Aliens, Darkness, and Predator. This 2-issue miniseries has got the subtitle Overkill. Sounds like it should be awesome, but unfortunately, it definitely isn't. It's terrible. Even worse, it was followed by a sequel, which is called Witchblade, Aliens, Darkness, and Predator, subtitle Mindhunter. This is a direct sequel to Overkill, so read that first, that's important. Mindhunter is a 3-issue series that is somehow even worse than the first series, Overkill. Who knew? There's another multi-line crossover you should be aware of. It's called Dark Crossings. Here are the covers. This is the 2 issues called Dark Crossings, Dark Cloud Risings. And then there's a second issue called Dark Crossings, Dark Clouds Overhead. Ooh, sinister. Now, this series features Tomb Raider, The Darkness, and The Witchblade, and it's a prequel to this, which is a series called Butcher Knight. I know literally nothing about this series. This is one of the only comics in this entire read-through I just could not, for the life of me, track down. So if anyone out there has read this 4-issue series, please post in the comments below what you thought of it and where it fits in. If you go back to the map here, you'll see there's also a little uncollected circle here, which is one-shots and crossovers. Many of you will think this is just another part of the multi-line crossovers, and that's cool too. I felt it made more sense to me to gather them here. These things are a matter of taste, and remember, these one-shots can be read at virtually any time. Unlike the ones I've mentioned elsewhere, it's not clear that they need to go between issue X or Y of the main series to make sense, for example. So in no particular order, here are the one-shots and crossovers we're talking about. There's also a couple of mini-series in here as well, but what the hell, let's just look at them all. Let's start here with Medieval Spawn and Witchblade, which is a 3-issue series. If you're also doing some general Artifactiverse reading, there's Darkness of the Level, which collects issues 0 to 5. There's also definitely part of this era a mini-series of 3 issues called Witchblade Destiny Child. Despite some cool covers hinting at a story with fan favourite Ian Nottingham, it was rubbish. Also in this era is a mini-series called Witchblade Shades of Grey. Unbelievably, this is a crossover between Witchblade and The Portrait of Dorian Gray, a story by the English raconteur and playwright Oscar Wilde. Very weird idea, not very good. There's a one-shot, which is Darkness Wolverine. Pretty cool story with excellent art by Tyler Kirkham and Stefan Czezik. There's a one-shot, which is JLA Witchblade. Totally self-contained story. I really liked it. Art is strong. It won't ever be collected anywhere in anything, by the way, because it's a DC crossover. There's also this issue, Lady Death and Witchblade. It's a self-contained story. Not great, but worth checking out if you're a Lady Death fan, whoever you are. I found this other one-shot called Tomo Witchblade. If you're not familiar with Tomo, you're not alone. I had no idea who this was before I read it. Apparently, she's a character from the 90s comic company Crusade, which is most famous for a character called She. Who knew? Not me. There's also another one-shot in this area floating around called Witchblade Demon. This is a one-shot issue here, but keep this in mind as we're going to return to it in video 8 when we discuss the Demon Reborn mini-series which spins out of this one-shot. And we've also, ironically, already seen Witchblade Demon as an issue because it's collected in the Witchblade Tomb Raider crossover collection, Trouble Seekers. We mentioned it there. There's also a random crossover issue here, which is Witchblade, Tomb Raider, Magdalena, and Vampirella. This one shot is really weird. Firstly, the interior art is all black and white. You're not getting that confused when you buy it or read it. It's all black and white. Secondly, it's actually 2 stories. The first one is a Tomb Raider singular self-contained standalone that's got nothing to do with anyone else. And the second is a crossover between Witchblade, Magdalena, and Vampirella. Weird. Next up is a one-shot called Witchblade Animated. The art is, well, it's like this. There's a one-shot called Witchblade Blood Oath. Looks like this. This one's interesting. There's a one-shot called Witchblade Wolverine. I should point out this is a total one-shot and nothing to do with the Witchblade Wolverine crossover that was part of Devil's Reign. Nothing at all to do with that. but it is a Marvel crossover. It'll probably never get collected anywhere. Artwork in it's kind of cool. We also have Witchblade Darkchild. This is a one-shot with the character of Ariel Darkchild, but it's not the last time Ariel is going to interact with the Artifactiverse, as we're going to see in later videos. Darkchild is a comic with an unusual publishing history. It was originally published by Maximum Press, and then later by Image, then later through Homage Comics, and then later through a publishing imprint of Wildstorm. I'm interested in it, and I'll probably do a reading order on Darkchild one day. The final one shot I want to talk about is Darkness Incredible Hulk. This one's a useful one to read, even if you skip the others that I've mentioned, simply because Jackie and the Hulk cross paths later on in the Artifacts era and make a fleeting reference to the event of this issue. And it's a pretty cool issue, and it'll never get collected anywhere because it is a Marvel crossover. All right, back to the map. So these are the only one-shots I'm going to talk about here. Some of you are probably going to think that's a bit weird and a bit odd, as there's several issues in miniseries that you're probably thinking, hang on, that belongs here. Well, the one-shots I'm talking about today are all ones that are in continuity. In other words, they include Sarah Pazzini as the Witchblade and Jackie Estacado as the Darkness. Now, way down at the bottom of the map, when we get to it, we are going to be covering the section here, which I call Reboot. And in that section, I'm going to be covering all the kind of alternative continuities, out of continuity issues, what if parallel universes, all that sort of stuff. I'll be covering that all in video 11, okay? But I'm not going to cover that today. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. That was the Origins era, all that yellow stuff here. I just want to take a moment before we finish just to talk about how the hardcore collector might want to collect these issues. There is, of course, the option of single issues, as I've done. There's also the option of trade paperback collections or volumes with a small v, as I've shown you in quite a lot of excruciating detail here. However, for the serious collector, there's also some large compendium editions for both the Witchblade and Darkness. These are available as both hardcover and paperback, and I'll show them here. There's Witchblade Compendium Volume 1, collecting issues 1 to 50, and there's Witchblade Compendium Volume 2, collecting issues 51 to 100. I've put a great review of both these books in the description below with a video from a very underrated channel called Wacom Comic Center. It's worth noting that even aside from the terrible binding issues we'll discuss in a second, these collections are rubbish. The mapping on them misses out several key issues simply because it goes from 1 to literally 100. As such, it misses out the key one-shots and crossovers needed for both of the events that tie into the Darkness, as you can see, as well as missing key issues for the endgame event and so on. Basically, there are several jarring points here where these collections are just collected badly, and I can only assume these were mapped by a Top Cow intern with no interest in comics. As such, even though they're highly sought after whales, I would strongly recommend buying them. Moving on to the Darkness Compendium Volume 1 collects issues 1 to 40, the special preview edition, Darkness Half, Tales of the Darkness 0.5 all the way up to number 4, the Darkness Wanted Dead, which is that most wanted issue that I mentioned earlier as well. And again, this mapping sucks as it misses out critical issues for Family Ties and the Necrobi crossover event. It is not a recommended purchase. Unbelievably, there's a Darkness Compendium Volume 2, collecting the Darkness Volume 2, issues 1 to 24. Remember, we talked about this as now being renumbered as issues 41 to 64 if you buy it digitally. Also, Darkness Volume 3, numbers 1 to 10. And then the Legacy numbered issues 75 to 89. I know that's confusing. We're going to discuss them in the next video as they really fit way more in the next era of comics and the next part of the map. However, again, I put a great review of both of these comics in the description below, again with a video from a very underrated channel, that's Wacom Comic Center. Please give them a watch, please give them a subscribe. You'll notice that both of the Darkness volumes again miss key essential crossover issues, which sucks. To make things even worse, all of these are major comic whales now. The hardcovers go for several £100s each in the secondary market, and added to that is the insulting fact that the binding of these editions is notoriously bad, with the comics literally falling apart mid-read and with terrible mapping. Well, basically, please don't buy these. You've been warned. Fortunately, we have good news. Top Cow are finally releasing these in a new format, which is currently available on Amazon. Now, whilst these have the same standard page size as the compendiums, and I would have loved to have seen this artwork get the oversized treatments, that's a bit of a shame, they are bound far better and more robustly, and in more manageable portions. Just to stress, do not be fooled by description on Amazon calling them absolute editions. These are not absolute editions, these are standard size hardcovers. Here's a picture to prove it. Witchblade Hardcover Volume 1 collects Witchblade issues 1 to 19, Darkness 9 to 10, and Tales of the Witchblade 0.5 to 3. And Witchblade Hardcover Volume 2 collects Witchblade 20 to 36, Tales of the Witchblade 4 to 8, the Witchblade Infinity one-shot, Witchblade Darkness one-shot, Darkness Witchblade one-shot, and Darkness 28. At the time of the making of this video, this is not yet released, but it's imminent, and here are my thoughts. I'm optimistic about this mapping, basically, for Witchblade. These collections are lovingly put together. Witchblade Infinity is a totally out of continuity story. I'll discuss it in Witchblade video 11. But it's pretty good, and so I have no problem with it being included. Finally, it includes the crucial one-shots needed for the crossovers, and so fingers crossed these are all sequenced correctly. I'm really optimistic about the way this is going to be mapped in the future. Hopefully they sort this all out and they keep on mapping things like Endgame and so on in the appropriate way. Top Cow are also releasing Darkness in matching beautiful hardcovers. We've got Darkness Hardcover Volume 1, collecting Darkness issues 1 to 18, Tales of the Darkness 0.5 all the way up to 4, Darkness Prelude issue 1, Darkness Preview issue 1, which is not the same as the Prelude, and then also Witchblade 10 and Witchblade 18 and 19. Again, I highly recommend this as a great way to collect for this era. Please support Top Cow via their Kickstarter to ensure we keep getting more of these awesome hardcovers, as it contains everything in the right kind of sequence, it's mapped out lovingly, it's not missing any issues. This is the way for the experts to collect. So again, here is our map. That's what it looks like. This is where we were. Please download it. Please have a look at it. And please follow along. As always, it's available to download on my website free of charge. And if you want to download it or print it out, please do so. It covers 902 issues. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter, where I tend to post a one-tweet daily review of whatever I've read that day. Given I read on average around half a dozen comic issues a day, it's a great way to see what I'm up to and what I'm planning for future videos. Please support the channel. It's easy to do that. Just head over to Amazon and pick up the first volume of my prose superhero novel, No Gods or Kings. That's less than $1 or less than £1. It's a story about a world like our own, but where superhumans are a reality. So not quite like The Boys, but it's set in the future as it sees how the world has changed as a result of this. It's planned as a series of 9 novels. The first 4 of them are already written and already available. They're free if you have Kindle Unlimited, and it means a huge amount to me if you can leave a positive review of them as well. If you want to read a free excerpt from the first book, you can read the entire first chapter on the same website as this reading map, which is nogodsorkings.com. The link for that is in the description below. Until next time, everyone, stay classy.